Today's episode is brought to you by We Break You Buy. Interested in sports cards and memorabilia? Check out We Break You Buy on TikTok. We Break You Buy is a small operation run by three brothers, offering spots for a chance at winning some incredible sports cards and memorabilia. That's We Break You Buy. Check it out today on TikTok. Welcome to another episode of Why Wasn't It Better? I am your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
Peter Baldeo, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a few now.
Yeah, it has. You're a veteran at this point. This is going to be your second James Bond film. That's a big deal.
Like Joe Flacco, put me back in. I'm ready off the bench.
Except like Joe Flacco, you don't disappoint during the big moments.
Don't completely let my team down when we needed it the most.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think didn't that not end well for him?
It didn't. I was rooting for him, but it just didn't go well.
Oh well.
I will say, honestly, just a little shout out here. Best day I had as a Giants fan was being able to watch the Cowboys and the Eagles both get absolutely crushed.
Yeah, it didn't go well for either one of them.
Yeah, let's make sure to leave that in the final. Make sure
we can leave that in.
Yeah, let's make sure the supporters know that although we're rebuilding for the 18th year in a row, it feels better to watch other teams lose.
Wait, so Pete, being a football fan, and this is a little bit this is in the past, but also it'll be in the future. So the Super Bowl matchup will actually end up already being revealed before this episode's released. Who do you think is going to be the matchup for the Super Bowl this year?
Wow, Anton, no pressure. All right, so I think the Niners. I would like to see the Niners play the Ravens. I'm looking at this new bracket now because all the division.
Yeah.
I would like to see the Niners play the Ravens, but I have a feeling it's going to be the Niners and the Chiefs, which I think would also be a very good game.
Gotcha. Okay, well, being a Niner fan, I'm not opposed to that, but definitely a very interesting playoffs with the Cowboys doing what they did in the first round.
Ooh, oh, you mean nothing? That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. I felt bad though, man. Their team did look really good. Their defense looked extremely solid, but for some reason they had no idea what was going on.
Oh well, they'll go on to live another day, and by the title of the film that we'll be going over, numerically, how many times can one live?
Great segue.
Twice is the only way to live.
Dun, 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 dun.
According to this film. You only live twice, Mr. Bond. Yeah, we're back to Bond, just in case anyone hadn't gathered that by this point. Yeah, Peter, this is going to be your second Bond film that you're discussing on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is a bold statement to make. This was a lot more fun to watch than the last one we had to endure.
Yeah. And I will say this too, admittedly, so the audience knows I am by no means a Bond expert. This was one of the older Bond films that I saw, one of the first older Bond films that I saw, and I got some interesting talking points. I think it's pretty cool. It's also very trippy for me to see Sean Connery like young. I just feel like ever since I've known him, he's just been an old man. But yeah, no,
he's an interesting guy, right? Because I feel like middle age did not suit him well. He looked good as a younger guy and great as a older gentleman that we're used to seeing him as. But if you see him in stuff in like the 70s and early 80s, it's strange.
He was just lost. He just didn't know what was going on.
I think he was a little out of shape too. Like Anton, when we did Never Say Never Again, we talked about like how like much better he looked than even his stuff in the 70s. He was just in better shape.
What do you mean? He was rock solid in 1974.
Even between Thunderball and this one, Anton, you could tell he gained some weight. I gotta say, 4K really is not kind to some of these actors.
No,
but
you can really see the flaws with some of them. But with some stuff, it looks great.
Yeah, like in 1974 during the film Zardoz.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Murder on the Orient Express because he was also in that film in 1974.
Great, dude.
Sorry.
I'm a big Hercule Poirot fan.
Oh. We got a couple of those films on our list, Peter, if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. The one in Venice.
I really like them. They're fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good. I think because I read the books.
Oh, I didn't see that. It was good?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining. It was called A Haunting in Venice. It was definitely Now, I don't know if I have this chronologically correct. It kind of had Knives Out vibes. Like it felt more Knives Outy than Knives Out. If that makes any sense? Like
Yeah.
it felt more like a horror and suspense because there was like almost like a ghost and haunting aspect to it. Whereas Murder on the Orient Express
Okay.
was just like a whodunit. This was like a
Right.
whodunit with a horror element. So I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was going to ask. They certainly marketed it as a horror type of film. Did it deliver on that?
I think it did. It was 55-45 horror. So by definition, it's a
Okay.
majority horror. So I think they get away with it.
I mean, was it
Okay.
horror or was it just like some moments were a little suspenseful?
I feel like whenever you go into the extraterrestrial, I'll always consider it horror because I feel like you never see any like good extraterrestrial things. You know, like you never see a guy in a movie that's like you never see the inverse of Bruce Almighty, right? Hey, guy meets a demon, demon wants to help him, he gets rich. It's usually like, okay, there's a demon, they could be haunted. It's usually something negative. So like I don't think
Counterpoint, Bedazzled.
damn.
Wait, when you
You're
say
right, you're right,
extraterrestrial,
though.
I thought you were talking about aliens.
Brendan Fraser.
You mean supernatural, right?
Supernatural was the TV show, wasn't it?
No. I mean supernatural as in like supernatural elements. Like when you said extraterrestrial, I thought you meant aliens.
sorry. Extraterrestrials, aliens. Yes, I meant
I
supernatural.
was like, wait, there's aliens in Venice? What? Like,
sorry.
For a hot minute, I thought, "Whoa, I really need to see this because apparently there's an."
yeah, I was
alien
like,
twist in
man,
this."
I was like, I did not pick that up from the trailer at all.
No, shit. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I meant supernatural, not extraterrestrial. No aliens.
Right,
Ghosts. It's ghosts
yes,
and demons, not aliens.
Okay, makes more sense.
That's actually
Okay, I was gonna say,
actually see haunting in Venice.
are we going
too,
to outer space
with aliens?
Because we almost go to outer space in this film.
Yes. Well, some people are already in space in this film.
That's true. We start off in space.
Oh, R.I.P.
Yeah, that poor
I
guy.
know. I felt so
But
bad.
It's coming up behind us.
But before we start to dive into the plot and a bit more about the film, Pete, you've been on the show, so you know the drill. Is there anything that you'd like to plug before we start to dive in?
Yes. Unrelated to Bond, I just finished Walter Isaacson's Elon Musk biography. It is spectacular. I think everyone should read it. The guy's a fantastic writer, and the book is nuts. And you read his entire story, everything that he does, including the erratic behavior, totally makes sense. I think he's the guy that humanity needs, but I don't think I don't know if people want to be him, but I think you should read it. So that's my plug of the week.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because there's some SpaceX technology in this film.
That's correct. The
Yes, there
original
is.
Starlink was in this movie.
Yep. Yeah. That actually sounds good. Pete, would you say that book is neutral or is it biased? Because some biographies are and aren't. You know what I mean?
I would say it's neutral. I think it's neutral because Walter Isaacson has
Okay.
a way of eloquently writing a negative situation and bringing out the negative characteristics in a person, exposing them and showing why it can be good for society, but also why it suffers. Like, meaning that
Fair.
if a billionaire is going to be the smartest man on the planet, something's going to suffer, and it's probably going to be his personal relationships. He has a way of exposing that, but also showing how Elon's trying to learn, which I think it felt to me neutral. I think it's worth it.
Okay.
Also, if people don't like to read, which is totally understandable, I get it. We live in 2024. On Spotify, if you're a premium member, you can like listen to the chapters. And I mean, a typical chapter will probably take you 15 minutes to read. You can listen to it in like 20, 25 minutes. So it's like perfect for
Okay.
like
All right.
walking. Like my whole objective in 2024 is to get people to like read and consume more information that's valuable as opposed to not valuable. And I'm just gonna leave it at that.
You're a noble man.
Well,
That's
I'm
good.
probably gonna fail
Doing the Lord's
gracefully,
work.
but that's fine.
I do have something to plug, Anton. I just finished The Crown, the whole series
Nice.
recently. I thought it ended very well. That's all I will say.
And I mean, from the clips that you've sent me, Pat, it's absolutely a show I need to watch. I will get on it soon.
Is it really that good?
I mean, it depends, right? Like, there's the historical angle, which turns a lot of people off. A lot of people find that stuff boring. I'm a history nerd, so I had a natural inclination towards that. But I mean, just in terms of entertainment, if you like A+ level writing and acting, then I absolutely recommend it to you.
Wow. Okay. It's more dramatic than.
It's very dramatic. It's, it takes some liberties liberties with some stuff, but we've talked about this in previous recordings, right? Any historical thing, there's always liberties that it takes, but it's some of the best acting and writing that I've ever seen in anything.
Does it compare to Bridgerton?
I haven't seen it.
I've never seen it either. I've only seen like a
I don't
handful of
know,
episodes.
but I definitely recommend it to you, Peter. I think you'd like it because I feel like you have an appreciation for the British history stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy history, man. I think if we don't learn from it or like, it's awesome. Actually,
Speaking of British, there's some British in this film that we're discussing today.
What movie are we talking about?
We're talking about You Only Live Twice.
So during the Cold War, American and Soviet spacecrafts go missing, leaving each superpower believing the other is to blame. As the world teeters on the brink of nuclear war, British intelligence learns that one of the crafts has landed in the Sea of Japan. After faking his own death, secret agent James Bond is sent to investigate. In Japan, he's aided by Tiger Tanaka and the beautiful Aki, who help him uncover a sinister global conspiracy. Released on June 13th, 1967 by Eon Productions and United Artists, directed by Lewis Gilbert, screenplay by Roald Dahl, loosely based on the novel by Ian Fleming, starring Sean Connery, Tetsuro Tamba, Akiko Wakabayashi, Mie Hama, Donald Pleasance, and Karen Dorr. A budget of $9.5 million, which is $86 million adjusted for inflation, with a box office of $111 million, $1 billion adjusted for inflation. You only live twice. All right, gentlemen, let's start to dig in. Pete, being the guest on the show, why did you want to talk about You Only Live Twice?
So I think I said this in our previous episode. I've been a big Bond fan, but I guess it's more of a big recent Bond fan. Like I've seen all of like the Pierce Brosnan movies, everything else, but I've never really invested the time to see one of these prior. So one, I thought it was going to be really cool to see a movie I've never seen. Two, the anchor that I have with modern Bond is going to be pretty cool to see where his like origin story's from. So I think it was more just nostalgic, and it was a movie that I've never seen. I love experiencing stuff like that. So I wish there was some profound, deep element, but just a cool movie that I haven't seen.
I think that's a great reason. I think we always want to encourage our listeners to just make sure to check things out if it looks cool. So I think that's a great reason, if any, to want to go about the movie. Pat, you have a very close connection with Bond, so would love to know more. What gravitates you towards going over this film for this episode?
So I had the benefit of more or less seeing the Connery films in order when I was a kid. By the time that my dad rented this from the video store, I had seen From Russia with Love and Goldfinger and Thunderball and Dr. No. So I was really hyped knowing that I would finally get to see Blofeld unmasked, right? I remember my dad telling me that, like, oh yeah, this is the one where you finally see Blofeld's face. I was not disappointed as a kid. This like blew me away when I first saw it. I was probably 6 or 7 years old when I saw this film for the first time. It was instantly one of my favorites. As I got older, I've noticed some of the, let's call them elements that haven't necessarily aged well. But despite the flaws, like this really does have some of the most iconic imagery from the entire series, right? I would say this is one of the most famous films in the series. It was following up Thunderball, which was the most financially successful film in the series at that point, and in some ways still is until Skyfall came along, adjusted for inflation, of course. Goldfinger and Thunderball, they are really the films that put James Bond from just a very successful franchise into what is made it a global phenomenon. The producers here knew that they had to meet the fan expectations, right? They had established the Bond formula. They needed to continue to check the boxes. It can't be a Bond movie without exotic locations, girls, a fantastical villain, cars, gadgets, music, etc., etc., etc. This was a major turning point in the series for reasons that I will get into later in the discussion. Because of the iconic imagery in this film, this is ultimately where a lot of the parody of James Bond came from, right? Like if Pete, you said you hadn't seen this before, but I'm sure having seen Austin Powers, you were like, oh yeah, I've seen this.
Definitely.
This is one of the Bonds that I rewatch the most. I don't necessarily think it's one of the best in the series, but for whatever reason, which we'll get into, I find this very watchable. Anton, what about you? And You Only Live Twice.
I remember watching this when I was much younger. My folks raised me on watching Bond films growing up. So You Only Live Twice, before doing the rewatch, a few of the things that really stuck with me was, one, it was set in Japan, two, and there were a bunch of ninjas. And that's where I was really excited to be able to revisit and see, okay, what else is there here? And I got to say, I'm glad that those are still two very strong sticking points that I still continue to love to this day. But there's definitely a lot to dig into in terms of what else this film has in store. It felt like it was just a treasure trove of just, it felt like it was packed with nostalgia for the past, with the fashion. The music was incredible. Again, luxurious setting for the film. So overall, just really, really fun film. And again, one that I'm very excited to have been able to rewatch for today's recording. So yeah, just excited to dig in.
Well, then let's dig in. Production history. So the first 4 films, they followed the general story arc of the novels, right? Thunderball was originally supposed to be followed up by On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which, would have followed the story arc of the novels in Blofeld. However, Broccoli and Saltzman, the producers of the Bond series at the time, they were unable to find any suitable snowy locations, and they made the decision to go with You Only Live Twice instead. Lewis Gilbert was hired as the director after initially declining the offer, but Cubby Broccoli talked him into it. Ted Moore, who had been the director of photography on the first 4 films, was replaced by Academy Award-winning cinematographer Freddie Young, as he was shooting A Man for All Seasons, for which he would win his own Oscar. And I want to call this out, Anton, because Freddie Young shot Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. Those are his 2 Oscar wins. So, no big deal. Just like 2 of the most famous movies of all time.
Some pretty incredible films.
Yeah. So you could almost argue he was an upgrade over Ted Moore. No disrespect to Ted Moore. But so the producers, Gilbert and Ken Adam, the legendary production designer, they spent 3 weeks in Japan scouting locations. After learning that the Japanese did not build castles next to the sea, they scrapped the original idea for Spectre's lair, and this is how the volcano lair came to be. Here's some interesting bit of trivia. At the last minute, they changed their flight home to watch a ninja demonstration. Shortly after takeoff, the flight crashed, killing all aboard. So who knows what would have happened to the Bond series had Broccoli and Saltzman been killed.
That would
it may have ended crazy. It may have ended on the spot. Yeah, who knows? The first draft of the screenplay was written in early 1966, and it was actually quite faithful to the novel. It was ultimately rejected. And for what it's worth, Anton, have you read the novel or any of them?
I have not read this novel, no, but I've read a couple of the Bond books.
Okay. Yeah. This, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but this has, other than the title and the Japanese setting and a couple of elements, this has almost nothing in common with the novel. This is really the first of the films to significantly depart from the source material. And also, for what it's worth, I don't really care for this novel at all.
Right.
It's one of the few Bond novels I was just kind of, it came out after Fleming's death.
And it's not uncommon. There's definitely quite a few places where I've read that the novel wasn't so great, but we'll dig into more, some other perspectives on that.
Usual screenwriter Richard Maybaum was unavailable, so children's novelist Roald Dahl was hired to write the screenplay. Despite having limited screenplay experience, Dahl actually was a close friend of Ian Fleming, who had died at this point. And yes, Peter, we're talking about that Roald Dahl, the guy who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He wrote the screenplay for this film.
Mr. BFG?
Yeah. It's one of the wackiest credits of any film we've covered so far.
I was going to ask that. This is the guy that was the author, right? The dude that wrote the book Skin?
Matilda?
Yep, sure was.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember reading that. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Legendary author. And also, of course, Ian Fleming wrote the screenplay for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, if you've ever heard of that film.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That film's horrifying.
It really is.
What?
Yeah,
it was pretty bad.
It's pretty creepy. The kid catcher, it's one of the characters in there.
The kid catcher guy?
Yeah, it's weird.
It was the 60s, though.
It was. Yeah.
Things were a lot different back then.
They sure were.
Evidenced by this movie.
Oh, yeah.
You noticed.
Were very different back then.
Oh, really? Yeah, you noticed
things
that.
Were
okay.
A little different.
Oh, man. Why do Chinese girls taste different than other girls? Roald Dahl, he said that the original novel was, quote, Fleming's worst book with no plot in it, which would have even made a movie, end quote. And therefore, he decided to write his own original story with limited influence from the source material. Now, there is an article in Esquire at the time where Dahl said that he was instructed by the producers to stick to the formula begun in Goldfinger and set in stone by Thunderball. Bigger and more outlandish stunts than ever before, a climactic battle with 2 armies and 3 Bond girls, a villainess who gets killed, who is Helga Brandt, the sacrificial lamb, who ends up being Aki, and the final surviving girl, Kissy Suzuki, who they don't even name in the film, but that is her character's name. By this point, Sean Connery was openly unhappy with playing Bond, which we talked about in the Thunderball episode. Broccoli and Saltzman were able to convince him to return to do this one by slightly increasing his salary, but even as filming began, they were already thinking about potential replacements. Actor Jan Werich was originally cast as Blofeld, but after several days of filming, the producers realized that he was not menacing enough. Director Lewis Gilbert referred to him as a, quote, poor benevolent Father Christmas, end quote, and thus he was replaced by Dr. Loomis, aka Donald Pleasance. Pleasance had several ideas for the character of Blofeld, including a hunchback, a limp, a beard, and a lame hand before he settled on the scar. I think that was probably a good decision on his part.
Did they settle on the, like, was the cat a part of that? Because I don't really understand why the cat was there.
They had already established the cat in the previous films where Blofeld makes an appearance. Of course, you don't see his face in those films.
Got it. Okay, cool. Oh, so this is the first reveal.
I gotta jump
Yes,
back.
this is the
Dog's
first
pissed in
time in the
house.
film series you actually see Blofeld's face.
Okay, so I saw that in your notes, and I was glad to ask. Okay, so
Yeah.
basically, there's been 2 movies after this, and you're waiting for the grand reveal of this guy, and he pops out with a scar on his face and a cat.
Yes. So Blofeld appears in From Russia with Love and Thunderball, but he's not the primary villain, right? He's the guy in the background pulling the strings. He's only in a handful of scenes.
Okay.
You only hear you basically see him from the neck down, and you only hear his voice.
So it's the same guy. All right, so here's the better question.
It's not the same actor, but
How did you feel about it? How did you feel about the grand reveal?
we'll get to it.
All right.
Anton, you good? Did we lose you? Uh-oh. I'll just plow ahead. Toshiro Mifune was originally sought to play Tiger Tanaka, but he was already committed to Grand Prix, so Tetsuro Tamba was cast in the role. Toshiro Mifune is a legendary Japanese actor. He's probably best known to Western audiences for playing the lead character in Seven Samurai. Just wanted to give him a shout out because he's a really famous actor. Akiko Wakabayashi and Mia Hama, both Toho Studios stars, were eventually chosen to play the Japanese Bond girls. Now, Hama initially cast in the role of Tanaka's assistant, Aki. She had difficulty with the English language. Now, initially, the producers were going to fire her, but after Tamba suggested she would commit suicide if they did so, she instead switched her role with Wakabayashi, who had been cast as Kissy, a part with less English dialogue required.
Wait, what?
Anton, you good?
That's not dramatic.
Wait.
No, not at all. You back, Anton? We
Yeah. Sorry, I dog pissed inside the house. I had to clean that up.
Oh, no, that's okay. We understand.
Sorry.
Can't say I haven't been there.
I figured it was something dog related.
Yeah, so cute, but so bad.
But yeah, the threat of suicide, yeah, that's a little, it's dark.
Toho though, great studio.
Yeah,
Lots of great like a pretty legendary studio.
They did all the Godzilla stuff, right?
That's right. Not only that, they've been known for, in general, a lot of films that have been like pretty like culturally important. Fans of Japanese cinema will recognize names like Lone Wolf and Cub, Lupin the Third. But then there's so many great titles that come out of Toho, including one of the key co-produced films with Studio Ghibli, My Neighbor Totoro.
Nice.
So Aki's car is a Toyota 2000 GT, so pretty awesome little sports car, and only 351 were built between 1967 through 1970. So they sell as for much as 1.2 million at auction. They had to remove the roof for the car in the film so Connery could fit in it. Little gadget sports cars like that, definitely fun to see, and very much collectible piece.
Low key, one of the coolest cars in the entire Bond series.
Yeah, it was a real nice car. Fun fact also, drive it. If your wallet's a little tight and you don't have the 1.2, you can drive it in Gran Turismo.
Ooh,
there we go.
Yeah.
Ooh,
good plug.
Right?
Very good plug.
Yeah, good one.
No, thank you.
So the Volcano Lair set cost $1 million to construct. It could have been seen from miles away and included a heliport and a monorail. So they definitely spent that money well. Filming lasted from July 1966 to March 1967, and the film was shot primarily in Japan, and most of the locations are identifiable. So Peter Hunt was asked to recut the film after the 3-hour rough cut tested poorly with audiences, and Hunt's cut provided a much greater success, and he was awarded the director's job on the next film, on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Connery had a miserable time filming this movie. He was constantly hounded by the Japanese press and was on edge for months, and we can understand why he left after the role. And as we mentioned on the Thunderball episode, Connery's issues with Broccoli and Saltzman really began with that film and reached a breaking point by this one. He was obviously affected by the pressure of filming in Japan, as Bond mania was really at its height during the location shooting, and couple that with the tensions with the producers, especially Saltzman, regarding the fact that they were raking money in from the franchise, yet not rewarding him equally for his role, making the series a massive hit it became. So we'll be touching more on Her Majesty's Secret Service in a later episode, but definitely interesting to see the evolution of these Bond films. And it's been quite a treat to start to talk about the production for this one. So as we have it, is now a good time to check in and see why this film wasn't better?
Let's start with the first reason. Let's just get this out of the way, the racial stuff. There is some awkward racial stuff in this film.
That is true.
Bond turning Japanese, it's not only ridiculous to watch just from a racial point of view, it also has no bearing on the plot whatsoever.
No, I actually forgot why he even had to become Japanese when he started doing it.
Well, I don't understand it because there really was no reason for him to do it. At no point does his disguise fool anyone. Think about it. He doesn't sneak into the villain's lair with it. He doesn't do anything meaningful with it. My only theory on why they did this is to try and keep something from the novel. But Pete, I'm speculating here, but you're watching this for the first time recently for this podcast. Yep. You see him undergoing sort of minor surgery to look Japanese, and you're probably thinking, well, this is weird. Maybe he's going to go undercover. But that's not what happens.
I didn't really understand it.
There's no logical reason for this to be in the film.
I've also, and correct me as I've only seen the new ones, I don't think I've ever seen Bond get plastic surgery.
It's not even really plastic surgery. They're like gluing stuff to his face.
We can call that plastic surgery for 1967.
I suppose. Yeah, maybe this was plastic surgery in 1967, but it's
it was weird. Now, counterpoint, right? And I think, is it just a product of the times, right?
Good question. And so I actually did a little bit of digging to see, one, can we kind of look at its contemporaries and how do those films talk about race, or how do those films approach like certain subjects? So, this particular method, it's been, of course, it's been categorized as yellowface, when actors not of Asian descent will wear it as like a disguise, or as used as a device in a film. So one of the more infamous moments of seeing this, of course, was in Breakfast at Tiffany's. If I'm wondering, I'm assuming both of you have seen this film.
I have, yeah.
So that was pretty egregious, and that was actually in 1961. So if audiences are seeing that, and it was kind of more culturally accepted with some outrage, definitely we can kind of look at that and say, yeah, it was probably like a bit of its time. But if you go all the way to like 1967 when the film was released, it was really interesting to see who the film that was ranked second for their highest grossing films for the year. The film was Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which was a film about race. So it's definitely not. It'd be fair to say that conversations about race were becoming much more nuanced for the greater populace. But seeing that kind of compared to this film, it's like different sides of the conversation.
Yeah.
It presents its own plot hole, Anton, or at least a major error, right? So they, quote unquote, turned Bond Japanese, and then there are not one, but two assassination attempts on his life after this. First, during the ninja training school with the spear, the guy tries to spear him, and then the second one with the poison on the string that accidentally kills Aki.
Rest in peace. That was a terrible way to die for her.
Horrible.
Oh my gosh, she was such a...
We'll get to that. Yeah,
she didn't deserve it. She did not deserve it.
Come on, man.
Like, it just doesn't make any sense. They must have not thought about this at all. So he's in the Japanese disguise for the ninja training school, right? And then for the fake wedding. But if you notice, by the time him and Kissy are climbing the mountain, the disguise is just gone. He doesn't have the Japanese wig on anymore, or the prosthetics. It's just gone.
He just gave up. This is stupid.
Yeah, they just abandoned it. It's so bad.
I know it is.
It's the lowest moment for Connery, I think, in the entire series. Well, it's either this, Anton, or blackmailing Nurse Fearing into having sex with him to keep her job in Thunderball. I don't know which is worse.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. And what's a Bond episode without me talking about the Venture brothers? They actually referenced
Yes,
they actually
do.
reference Dr. Venture putting on, like, pretending to be of Asian descent in one of the episodes. So again, just another great connection between Bond and the Venture Bros.
It's also no coincidence that this is where the film comes to a screeching halt pace-wise. The fake wedding, this is pretty much where I sort of start to nod off in the film.
Yeah, I don't think that was needed.
It wasn't needed at all. It was completely unnecessary.
I don't really understand that. It's like they were hashing out this elaborate plan, and then they're like, oh wait, by the way, we're married.
Yeah, but not really. And there's really no reason because I don't even need to be undercover. None of it moves the plot forward at all. They could have just put Bond on the island without all this nonsense. It's racially insensitive, and it is a complete waste of valuable runtime. Because think about it, right before this, we get the ninja training school stuff, which is cool. You get all the throwing stars, you get the rocket gun stuff, like, which is awesome. And you're like, here's a fake Japanese wedding that has really nothing to do with the plot, and it's going to take up 10 minutes.
And 1967 plastic surgery.
Yeah. I have in my notes here, this is the part of the movie where you can just leave it running and go up and get another cocktail.
Yeah.
So
it's like your intermission.
I was definitely curious about this with the transformation scene. Was it supposed to look like they dyed his hair, or
don't they put a wig
or
on
put
him,
a
right?
wig on, which is like just an interesting fact, right? Sean Connery like wore a toupee for all of his appearances as Bond.
Right.
Yeah. So he just had to pop on a different toupee.
Correct. Yeah. I read on Twitter that he ends up looking like John Saxon.
That's really funny.
Do we have anything to add about this?
Man, I think it was, you could really take it out of the film, and the film would be better for it.
Is
way better.
Was this the dumb question? Was this the highest grossing Bond film?
No, it was close though. So Thunderball, which is the film before this, that made about 140 million. That's about 1.3 billion dollars today.
Yeah, nice haul.
I think the only thing that is a saving grace of having this scene in the film at all is it gives us a little bit of a picture into Sean Connery's journey in Japan before he ends up teaming up with Wesley Snipes in for that case in the US in the 90s.
That's right. Yeah, when he has to solve that corporate murder. Yeah.
But hey, good on Sean Connery.
Anton.
Yeah, good on Sean Connery for really like leaning in on his past too.
It would be a cool like YouTube video to like string all of his movies together like in a universe. You know how they have those like YouTube theories where they're like Sean Connery actually was here, started as a Scottish knight. Wait, did you there was only one scene in that movie where, so he's actually Scottish, and there's one scene in that movie where you can hear his Scottish accent come through. Like, he plays a British guy obviously very well, but the first time I heard it was near the end when it was in the factory and the factory was blowing up, and I was like, oh, there he is. I don't know. I don't think anyone heard it or anything. Clearly no one did, and I'm just talking.
No. It's he was clearly trying to do a more English version of an accent in the Bond.
No, he had to
more.
And then I think his accent was great.
And then as he got older, he let the Scottish go.
Yeah.
And then he went full Egyptian for his role as Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez.
Highlander. Anton, it's not really a racial part of this, but my dad pointed this out to me. When he kills the assassin who kills Henderson, and he pretends to be the guy who's wounded. You know what I'm talking about? And the Rock's grandfather ends up taking him back to Osato's headquarters. My dad pointed out this is arguably more ridiculous than him trying to be Japanese, because all of a sudden the guy doesn't notice that all of a sudden his friend is 6'3" and 200 pounds.
Yes. One of the notes I have here is like, did no one notice that like this guy is he's so much taller than everyone in the movie?
Yeah. And of course that guy's shoes somehow fit him. He puts the guy's shoes on.
Pat, just you don't gotta ruin it, dude.
It's a very interesting scene.
And he's got a face mask on. He put a face mask on, and then he's in the back.
Right.
And I was like, does he not realize his friend's like groaning with an English accent now? No.
Well, to be fair,
I think they ADR'd it. If you remember, because I've watched this movie like 50 times at this point. When he's pretending to be wounded, it sounds like a Japanese actor doing ADR. He's like, oh, it's so funny.
It's terrible.
So is it? I don't know.
Accurate.
We get a badass fight. It's
accurate. You had to. Like,
It's a pretty badass fight.
wait, Kim, you're talking about the fight between Bond and I'm calling him a brute because I just played Spider-Man, like the big thug.
Yeah, The Rock's grandfather.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Like Dwayne Johnson's grandfather.
Savage.
Yeah.
Okay, so
How awesome
that
is
is
that?
really cool. And it's ironic that he's doing like, wow, fight scenes. Really, I guess now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, great
One
fight.
thing I wrote down was the stunts, right? I'm a big stunts guy. I love to see stuff like that. And like, I used to love like Rush Hour and watching like, my grandma used to watch like mad Bruce Lee movies. So I used to always just be watching Kung Fu movies and like Days of Our Lives. Like those are our two things. And then Hindi movies. So I think this is important to put it in the context. This movie was done in 1967. Right. So take away anything we've learned after 1967. But like these guys were actually choreographing a fight, right? Like it's like a dance. You can see that. And they're doing all of their stunts in 1967. And I thought that was really cool because the choreography was just as sick. Like they couldn't cheat with CGI. Like you literally had to have like it was a dance between two people and you hope one of them was a stunt person that was getting the crap beat out of him. I thought that was really cool.
There's some great stunts in this
Yeah.
film. Number 2 reason why this wasn't better, Bond jumps the shark. I briefly touched on this in the intro, but You Only Live Twice was a turning point in the series. Starting with this film, the series would move into a much different, bigger, more grandiose, more whimsical, much more self-aware era that would occasionally cross the line and occasionally delve into self-parody. Pretty much every film going forward contains some kind of reference or callback or throwback to the first 4 films. And Anton, this movie goes big. It looks big, it feels big, and this is really where the series starts to get ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. And part of that is we've touched on it before. The film started to develop like the Bond formula, right? So if you have that base set as the formula, then you could start to say you start to really play with it a little bit, and as you say, jump the shark. And for any listeners that may not know, Pat, could you describe what jump the shark actually means and what it's in reference to?
So it's a reference to the show Happy Days. It's often applied in a negative context. It's usually associated with where a movie or a series sort of betrays its origins and starts to move into a more ridiculous place.
Yes, exactly.
Like Dawn of the Dead moving into Shaun of the Dead.
Or literally Fonzie, who really was more of like a down-to-earth cool guy that would hang out at the local diner, was jet skiing and literally jumped over sharks in later seasons.
Yes. All the Bond movies have some element of ridiculousness in it, right? This film took things to another level. And it's one of the biggest criticisms of this film, right? That it's too over the top. This is the first one where they also, I mentioned this, they completely threw out the source material. It takes almost nothing from the novel. Now, I'm okay with this because I didn't really care for the novel, and I do find this movie very entertaining, but I do understand the criticism of it. By jumping the shark here, they went full-blown, fantastical, over-the-top science fiction, really a conscious effort to go big, right? And it would forever alter the series. It would ultimately open the door for something like Moonraker, which is basically a remake of this film. It's very much self-aware. This is significantly more ridiculous than the previous 4, right? The first 4 movies, you wouldn't call them realistic, but they were more grounded than this. This is banana nut bread crazy.
Right.
This feels like a different era of Bond, and it is.
It sounds like
In the
Go ahead, Anton.
I was going to say in the previous films, a way to take out like a villain taking out someone with piranhas isn't really something you would expect in a Bond film before this film. But
Right.
hey, bring it on.
Pretty hilarious, by the way. I also feel bad. I have some commentary about her death. But Pat, after hearing you say that, it almost feels like Michael Bay got a Bond license and they were like, you can make whatever the hell you want. But it's what you would expect
Right.
if Michael Bay got a Bond
I
license.
know what you're saying though, but I mean, you can really tell too as the series was progressing, they were getting a bigger budget with each film, and you can tell they had money to spend on this. And I think that's ultimately for a good thing. Again, I understand why some people don't like the stuff that goes on in this film, but I do enjoy it for what it is. I think the plot does move competently in a linear fashion. Yes, it's crazy. Yes, there are things about it that are just completely bananas, but the plot is pretty easy to follow, and at least it moves along. Let's start to talk about some of this ridiculous stuff, because this is where the conversations get real fun.
Let's go. This is what I've been waiting for. Hold on, let me get my Word document so people know.
We're going to go through the plot here, right? You'd think the Americans and the Russians could do better than blame each other, but it was the Cold War. This was bound to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I do like how the British are the only cool heads in the room. They're like, we disagree. Now, this was a trend that would continue well into the 80s. I have to give Broccoli and Saltzman credit for not always making the Russians the bad guys. Broccoli once said that eventually Bond movies will be watched in Russia, and he wanted to avoid making Russians the recurring villains. But the reason Fleming and McClory created Spectre in the first place was in anticipation of the Cold War not lasting forever, and they wanted to create a sort of neutral villain. Pre-title sequence. So we get some space capsules stolen, right? Which, by the way, must have blown audiences away in 1967.
SpaceX.
I admittedly couldn't just help but think of Austin Powers during the whole pre-title sequence.
They had to, though.
I was going to say
the portray space.
Yeah, the effects don't look good in 4K. I will say that. Like, oof.
No, it looks like they faked the moon landing. That's what they did. It looks like that's the same crew.
Oh,
faked the moon.
Peter, can you please remember this? Because just solely based on you saying that one sentence, we now need to have you back for the Diamonds Are Forever episode.
Would you judge me if I don't know what that is? Like the Zales commercial?
It's okay. It is the next and last official Bond film that Connery was in, and there is a fake moon landing scene in it. I'm not making this up.
Let me know when. But I also think too, you gotta give me some time because I'm gonna start watching all of these in order. Just like I had a lot of fun watching this movie.
It's delightful.
Yeah.
Also in the pre-title sequence, I didn't think about this until like the 10th time that I've watched the film. So this was quite a while ago, but the Bond is dead fake out subplot, it goes nowhere.
Why did they do that? I was
It's
so confused.
I don't know.
Just to
I
fit
don't
the
know.
title of the film.
They don't do anything interesting with it, right? He fakes his own death, and within 5 minutes, he's back on the mission, name dropping himself all over Tokyo.
So
They
I just seeing this one, like I basically, if you think about it, I saw like the third movie and like movies 18 through 25, like, but I've never seen anything in between. I just assumed that something happened in the first or second one, and they had to quote unquote fake his death.
Nope.
It's totally
Not at all.
It was
Doesn't
really
make any sense.
It was really confusing too, because not only do you have that sequence with him faking his death, but then throughout the film there's a lot of inconsistencies that really make you question,
This is so great.
were people in on it? Did they know he died? Did they know who he was? And it just made it much more confusing.
And
we do get the great line about Chinese girls tasting different than other
and
girls.
5 minutes later, he gets on the submarine. Request permission to come aboard the sub, sir.
I like how when they open the casket, he does the like baby he's dead pretending to be frozen thing.
Really badly.
It's antithetical to the plot, right? Because if you think about it, Bond is supposed to be a secret agent, right? He operates undercover. Like, why publish his picture in the paper?
But it wasn't like, oh, James Bond, like
Naval commander.
MI6 agent. It was naval commander. So it was there was some sort of
though, like
not to say that it's a misdirection that makes sense, but
it doesn't make sense.
No, I was gonna say, with the title of the film, You Only Live Twice. I think about a lot of other Bond titles. It makes a lot more sense to what the actual plot of the film is. This one, it really is tied to that just small portion of the film of like Bond faking his death in the beginning, with like no bearing on the plot whatsoever.
It almost feels like they wrote the entire movie. They were done. They were like, "This is awesome." Then they closed it and they saw the title. They were like, "You only live twice." And then they're like, maybe we should just fake his death in the beginning. Like it feels like they went back after and they were like, we need to kill Bond to bring him back.
It's so funny because they do bring it up later in the film, right? Like this is where it gets hilarious. So his name and photo are in the papers, but then Osato and Helga Brandt, they don't recognize him, or do they? We don't know, because when he goes to Osato's headquarters, right, undercover, he's pretending to be what the heck was his name? Mr. Fisher, Peter Fisher, right? He's pretending to be this chemical company salesman.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's implied that Osato orders Helga to kill him after he sees his gun on the X-ray desk thing, right?
Okay.
Right.
He sees that he's carrying a gun, and then when Bond leaves the appointment, he tells Helga Brandt, kill him.
Yeah.
if they didn't recognize him from the paper, or they did recognize him, why would they not kill him immediately? And then you see also there's a camera in the office. So like, did they know he was there the night before? They must have known, right? Because they have the office cleaned up. Like the body's gone, all the stuff that he breaks when he's fighting the Rock's grandfather, all that stuff's gone.
Like maybe they knew about it and they took the meeting anyway.
But why?
It doesn't make any sense, but
No.
then they actually talked to Blofeld about it later in the film.
This is where it really gets crazy. You're right, Anton. They tell Blofeld Bond is dead. It was in all the papers. It's like, oh, you mean the papers that had his picture in them? It just doesn't add up at all.
It's nuts.
yeah, I guess now that you pointed out, it's a big plot hole.
It doesn't make any sense. And but this is my favorite part. This is the best for me. Blofeld has the X-ray of the gun, and he goes, "Only one man in the world uses this gun." Really, a Walter PPK, the mass-produced firearm. That's how they realize it's James Bond.
That's what I cracked up about. I was like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "I'm pretty sure. Like, aren't British soldiers all issued those guns?"
I was gonna say, pretty standard issue, right?
Must be James Bond.
They still make Walther PPKs. You could still buy them new. They still manufacture them, I believe.
Well,
it's a 100-year-old gun at this point. It's a pre-World War II handgun, and they still make them today.
Well, yeah. I think it's safe to say the writing wasn't very consistent.
Well, if you don't like this, you're going to love the future films, because this, Anton, this really started an annoying trend in the series where James Bond is apparently well known all over the world. It's like, is he a secret agent or not? Because apparently random people know his name and who he is going forward.
Or also Bond pretending to always going undercover as someone else.
An Asian guy.
Right. In this case, a Japanese fisherman, but we only need him to go undercover for maybe a day or two, and then just when you actually find the villain's base, you can just lose the disguise.
This is like a bad Archer episode.
Blofeld's plan is insane. I always forget this until I'm rewatching it. He's being backed by China. China is backing all of this. And Anton, if you really jog your memory, China was behind the events of Goldfinger. They are the ones who give Goldfinger the dirty bomb that he was going to set off in Fort Knox. So this is something that they had played with before in the series.
And I mean, it was the Cold War, right? So there was, I think it was feeding into all like who are the villains in a lot of the films like this, right?
You'd think the Russians, but of course, following actual history, by this point, despite both superpowers being communist, China and the Soviet Union were not allies at this point by the 60s. They split. Blofeld has developed SpaceX level technology, and his only goal is to start World War III.
Did he, and correct me if I'm wrong here, when he was supposed to be quote unquote compensated for starting a war between the United States and Russia, did they say that they were going to pay him $100 million?
That was the down payment.
That was the down payment. So $100 million
that was the down
in
payment.
1967? Like, so they're paying...
It's about $1 billion today.
They're paying this guy $1 billion to start World War III?
Apparently.
Like, you don't think anyone's going to notice that payment moving around the system? I mean, listen,
You would think if World War III broke out...
You'd get away with it.
They would, yeah. Well, I mean, Pete, you work in banking. Before computers, it was a lot easier to hide money.
That's true. Yeah, you can't do it now with the blockchain.
Now, this is a really deep cut, and they mention this in Thunderball and the novels. In this universe, Spectre was hiding and laundering a lot of its money in Argentina. Oh, also, when it comes to Blofeld's plan, why would he keep the captured astronauts alive at all? They're not ransoming them. There's no reason for it.
Wait, and what was his rationale for pulling Bond off? Because he had an air conditioner on his back?
Yeah, he's like, no astronaut would bring his air conditioner. So, Pete, you were seeing this for the first time. Did you think he was going to go into space?
I thought we were going to get there, but it didn't. We didn't get there.
Oh, you just wait till Moonraker. We go to space.
I'm gonna honestly. So after you had me do the episode,
so much fun.
Bought, like I think Amazon had like 25 of them, like all of the Bond movies, for like $30 or something. So I bought them, and like
it's a great deal.
Now that I've like embarked, I mean it was $40 or something. It was a steal, and I was like,
still a great deal.
Like, wow. So I ended up going to I went through it today, and I was like looking at these, and as I watched this, I was like, dude, I'm just gonna watch all these before the year's out. That's my objective this year. I've added that to my 2024 list. Complete the entire Bond.
In some ways, I envy you. I wish I could go back and experience all of these for the first time again. It's what a feeling.
Oh, I can't wait. I enjoyed it, man. I had a lot of fun watching this, and I think I'm actually gonna watch this with Ashley. I think she would love it because it's nuts.
Look, I mean, we went into this discussion a little bit on when we talked about No Time to Die, but like this is back when the series just had fun.
Yeah.
They were just fun. It was just pure entertainment. Bond wasn't depressed. He didn't have a kid. The films weren't 3 hours.
Yeah, it wasn't sad
He
Bond.
did.
Yeah, it was just escapism. That's all it was.
He didn't have real world problems, man. He was just a spy that was able to get with
He
any
shouldn't.
woman he wants,
He-
has the coolest gadgets and the coolest cars, and that's it. Doesn't have to worry about
And he's just
drama.
going on
That's it.
Doesn't have
missions.
to worry about cleaning the house.
Nope.
Nothing.
Like, what's next? We get to see Bond in rehab.
When all the money's run out.
Ugh,
we
man, I
already-
don't want to give them. I don't
but
want to
we-
give them ideas.
But we did twice.
This season on Intervention.
Donald Pleasance as Blofeld. What do we think?
It's pretty iconic, right?
It is
I mean,
iconic. Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
like very clear that it was so iconic. They're like, well, which villain do we pick out of the James Bond series to be in Austin Powers? But even outside of that, yes, I think it was a very like it was definitely a performance that sticks with you.
Definitely. It's really good makeup too, his eye scar. I do like Donald Pleasance. You know, I'd say either this role or Dr. Loomis in Halloween
Mhm.
are his best known performances,
Dr.
right?
Loomis.
He went.
Yeah, he's
he
Dr.
went,
Loomis. Yeah.
I think between the two, it's so hard to choose which is the favorite, just because Halloween 2 Dr. Loomis, like really over the top crazy, is something that I'll always enjoy.
Awesome. It's phenomenal. I shot him 6 times. I have to say, Dr. Evil has kind of tainted this performance a little bit for me.
Yeah.
But you're right, Anton. Like this truly is an iconic like movie villain. It is. He's not very physically imposing, though. That's my only like quibble with it.
But he
'Cause
gives you the creeps.
He in the novels he is a more than a physical match for Bond. He's like 6'4", well
Mhm.
over 200 pounds. He's a really big, dangerous guy. And in here, you know, he's not at all.
To be fair, too, also kind of it's what really sets the trope for like, or it really I guess feeds into the trope of like what makes for a standard like Bond main villain. There's some sort of like facial deformity, very big egocentric individual, and what am I saying? Blofeld really was that to a T, right?
Yeah, he is. I don't know that they ever quite got on-screen Blofeld perfect. My favorite version of Blofeld is the one that we get in From Russia with Love and Thunderball. I think he works better as a character when he's unseen and he's pulling the strings behind the
The
scenes.
voice.
Oh, not
And
Inspector.
it's nothing against Donald Pleasance. I actually do really like his performance here. The next film, Anton, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where he's played by Telly Savalas, that is my favorite on-screen Blofeld.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Yul Brynner had played him?
I would have loved to see that.
Oh my gosh. Pete, you know who Yul Brynner is?
I've seen pictures of him because I looked it up.
Okay, so you know who we're talking
Yeah,
about,
I
the,
do.
right? Yeah.
the king from The King
Yeah.
and I, Ramses.
From the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
A lot of people have speculated, you know, about like he would have been the ultimate Blofeld, and I have to agree. The idea, the concept of him as Blofeld is just incredible. You know, it is a little anticlimactic here, right? There's no real showdown. Bond ends up fighting his giant blonde German bodyguard named Hans. You know, Blofeld just kind of slips away. I understand why they did it. They were setting him up for the next film, but you were kind of waiting for the showdown, right?
Yeah.
Waiting for a bigger ending for
Yeah.
sure.
I was expecting something more Bond-like.
But hey, I'll take a Ninja Compound.
Oh, hell
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about
Strike
how
team.
cool, first of all, the ninjas were? And then second of all, I don't know if anyone's ever seen Power Rangers, but their outfits, or I guess the grammatically correct term would be the putties from Power Rangers that would follow years later are based off of these ninjas that are storming into this crater.
I'm drawing a blank, but I'll have to look
Google
it up.
and as soon as you see it, you're gonna
It's
be
like
like,
the-
"Yup, I know exactly what you're
The
talking
gray
about."
the gray guys made out
Yeah.
of like dirt
Like
or
where
whatever.
they would send hundreds of them.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
low-level
Okay,
soldiers,
okay.
they would just get
the nameless
yeah,
goons.
they would just get beat up. Check out their outfits; they look very similar to the ninjas.
Continuing our discussion about Bond jumping the shark, there's another trope that got started in here, and I'm going to quote actually Dr. Evil here. When his son Scott asks, "Why don't you just kill him?" It's like, no. We're going to put him in an easily escapable situation involving an overly elaborate exotic death. When Helga Brandt tries to kill Bond in this film, I wrote down her plan here in detail. It is completely ridiculous, and I absolutely love it. But it is worthy of us making fun of it. Okay, having already captured Bond, her plan is as follows: have sex with him, lull him into a false sense of security, fly him in a small plane while wearing a World War I fighter pilot hat and a goddamn parachute, trap him to his seat with what appears to be a slab of balsa wood that he can easily karate chop, explode some kind of hand grenade that cripples the plane, and then parachute to safety and hope the plane crashes, resulting in Bond's death.
Which Bond proceeds to land without landing gear and
Right.
surviving. And I
Right.
think, if I'm not mistaken, like single engine Cessnas are like the deadliest plane. Well, I mean, let me be careful with what I say nowadays with Boeing.
Yeah. I just think there are easier ways to kill him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little.
But I'm grateful for it because it is
Part of-
hilarious to talk about.
Part of that jumping the shark, right?
Incredible. That's the thing. It's like, how do you balance this, right? Like, yes, it is completely ridiculous, all the stuff that's going on in this film, but it's so funny, and I enjoy rewatching it, and I'm having an even better time talking about it with both of you.
Because it's like it almost becomes like a nuclear arms escalation. It's like, how do you get it bigger and
Yeah.
bigger and bigger each time?
Right.
So eventually, of course, like, I mean, we've seen how the films have gone over the years, but this was just the
I don't know why
start to
anyone
it.
could hate it, because think about it. If we don't get this, we don't get Austin Powers, and we don't get all the other parodies and ripoffs of this film. So it's like, what's there not to like?
Right. It's fun. It's absolutely, it's fun. And I think like that was the 100%, you said it, Pat, this is escapism. This is an opportunity for people to just lose themselves in fun.
And then she gets killed by piranhas.
Wild, by the way.
Right.
Absolutely wild. Loved it because I love a good piranha kill. Wish I would have seen more detail. Shout out to the movie Piranha, which they made years ago. Great. I don't really understand why this guy has tons of them, but I guess because are they considered Asian?
So he
He just
can.
has them, and this is how he kills people because that was wild.
Did he have to have them imported? Because I thought they only live in the Amazon.
South America, right?
Right. So he would have had to. Blofeld he was serious about this because he would have had to pay. He had to pay to have them imported to Japan. That's commitment.
That's how you know you're.
Pete, did you see it coming
That's how you know you're really.
when they walked across the little bridge?
Definitely.
Did you see it coming?
Knew it was
Okay.
coming. Once they put the
And then you
shot
see-
on like his foot,
Yeah,
I was like,
the pedal.
oh, they're both going
Yes,
down. I
yes.
was like, no, he wouldn't kill Sato. And then I was like, oh, that lady died quickly. And I was like, yeah, her plan wasn't very well thought out. I was like,
Yeah. I wanted to just also represent piranhas a little bit, just dispel a few myths. To strip the flesh of a 180-pound human in 5 minutes, it's estimated would require at least 300 to 500 piranhas.
yeah. So the guy was woefully short then. I don't know if that's the right end.
How many do you think Blofeld imported? It's got to be that many, right?
I mean, listen, with $100 million paycheck, banking on the end of the world, which I don't really get what good the money's going to be. Like, what are you going to buy? But anyway, 500,000.
Well, he does allude to that. He does tell Bond after Russia and the United States have annihilated each other, a new power will arise. So I think he's getting more out of it than just money. He must be getting some kind of
position in the Illuminati that's going to be set up.
Yeah, I'm guessing he like some sort of territorial gain.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
for him and his piranhas.
Yeah,
For piranhas to naturally be in
right.
Japan.
I suspect that one of his goals was to upgrade from piranhas to sharks.
Sharks with lasers on their heads.
Yes.
Eventually, let's not get carried away.
Yeah.
Anton.
Lasers wouldn't
Let's keep
at
this
least be
grounded.
until 1975, right? You calm it down over there.
Right. Maybe Barracuda in between there.
Yeah.
Seahorses.
There's so many little details in this movie that are ridiculous. When they're looking at the photograph of the cargo ship taken from Osato's safe, Tiger tells Bond, the watermark says, "We liquidated the tourist who took this picture." Like, why would they write
Yeah.
that?
First of all, who's
So crazy.
they liquidated? Like, what is this? A short sale? Oh, via
Yeah,
microdot, by
I-
the way. Oh, we found a microdot. And I was like, okay, remember, this is 1967, right? Like, they didn't really have Google back then.
No. Spectre was really efficient. They took microdot notes on all of their pictures and they put them in a safe in Osato's headquarters.
The scene that really got me, and this seems like probably just, pretty insignificant, but the way Bond gets his ticket for the sumo match is he goes into the full-on like locker room den of all the sumo wrestlers, goes to like the head Rikishi, the head sumo wrestler, and is like, "You have my ticket." right? And
Yeah.
he didn't
Not
just want to
from
go.
not from the box
Yeah,
office.
he doesn't go to the box office. No, it's
Nope.
it's the same concept. If Bond went to the locker room for the Yankees to get his ticket from Aaron Judge,
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
if that makes no sense,
What do you mean?
then I wonder what was
That
going on
plot
here.
totally checks out.
When they drop the car into the ocean from the
I literally wrote
helicopter.
down Magneto car.
This is one of my pet peeves in movies, though. I can't stand it when movies show footage from the movie itself. They do this twice, right? First, Tiger shows Bond footage of him chasing Aki, but it's footage from the movie. And then when they're watching the chase car get dropped in the ocean, it's really cool to see. But like, was there another helicopter filming the helicopter dropping the car in the
Yes.
water?
Yeah,
That's what I think. Or when Bond was on the plane for the first time, there's a shot where those 4 helicopters are coming, and one of them is like literally 4 feet above the camera. I was like, wow, they're pretty close. And I was like, in 1967,
Yeah.
I was like, that must have been terrifying.
Well, I did ask my dad what this was like to see in the theaters in 1967. He said it blew everyone away.
It's
It was
probably the
amazing.
coolest thing they've ever seen, right? Like
Yeah.
I kept
Oh, yeah.
reminding myself, like you have to watch this movie with everything and take it for what it is, because all of your knowledge stops in 1967, right? Like you know
Right.
nothing past 1967 of what the world could be.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Pete, because a lot of people, they can't do that when they watch old movies. They can't get past it.
I mean, I get it, right? Like the time was different back then, movies back then. Like I think even Holy Grail. Someone was going on about Holy Grail the other day. No, listen, Holy Grail's funny. It's hilarious. It's part of our culture. We're all learning, right? Like it wasn't perfect, but it was made back then, and you have to kind of accept that. Now, certain things are obviously going to be blatantly crazy, but realistically, man, you got to give it a pass. Because like these people didn't know what the world was going to be like 60 years later.
I'm grateful for the craziness. I
Yeah.
really am. This movie, it's so entertaining. We talked about Aki dying in this film. It is a shame. She was a great character, and there was no point in killing her. She just gets replaced by Kissy Suzuki like 3 minutes later.
Very sad, but also doesn't seem like no one cared.
Yeah. No, they were like, she's dead.
Anyway.
Yeah. Do you have any others?
Anyway.
Yeah, it's a shame they decided to stick to the template of we need to kill one of the Bond girls. It's like you didn't have to do that. There wasn't really any point to it.
Yeah, I feel like none of them really got good justice. The one girl got eaten up by piranhas. One of them got poisoned, which wasn't really cool.
No. The other one, she makes it out. My favorite part of the film, I want to talk about Charles Gray.
Charles Expat Gray.
He plays Henderson. He is one of the most English people I've ever seen in a movie, despite the fact that he lives in Japan and dresses in a kimono. His voice just rolls off. Talking so unbelievably English. It's wonderful. When Bond hits his leg with the cane, he's like, I lost that in Singapore in 42. Oh, that was stirred, not shaken. I hope I got that right. Oh, it's not Japan, old boy. It's not the Russians either.
I don't like how he died. He just got stabbed in the back and died. Like he
was just
you didn't like
quiet.
Oh, it was hilarious.
No, but
he dies in the most dignified
he was
manner.
just talking and then he wasn't talking, and I was like, he's dead, isn't he?
It's like, well, that's a British way to die. Like, it's not upsetting anyone. It's just very subtle and quiet.
Yeah.
I like when Bond compliments him. He's like, Russian vodka, well done. He goes, I get that from the dolman at the Russian embassy, among certain other things.
Sounds like Anthony Hopkins.
Talking about
Peter, you absolutely need to see Diamonds Are Forever, because for whatever reason, the producers decide to cast him as Blofeld in that film.
Wait.
He plays Blofeld in a movie.
This is gonna start watching this ASAP.
Yeah. And this is also the one where Bond goes to Las Vegas. There's so many reasons why you need to see this one.
Yeah, literally have all of them.
I can tell Pete is just like giddy with excitement.
I'm
What?
gonna watch this
Bond in
You're gonna
Vegas?
hear from me. It's gonna be like June, and you're gonna be like, Pete, we want you on a new episode because they've decided to come back. 2024, Bond is back. He's dealing with the traumas of COVID, the mental energy, exiled from Britain, living in the United States of America. Oh wait, he's dead. He can't come back.
And if you think this movie's ridiculous, Diamonds Are Forever blows it away.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will.
It's not
I'm gonna
good.
enlist my wife on this.
It is
I think
ridiculous.
She's gonna. I don't know. She may just be turned off. She may be one of those people that can't see past 1967. I gotta ask her.
My wife loves watching the Connery Bonds. She thinks they're
I
hilarious.
can't wait. Live and Let Die. This is Roger Moore. It almost reminded me. You ever see the old school Batman with Adam West? That's kind of what some of the stunts reminded me like in this movie. And I was just waiting for a bam or a plow.
Yeah, it gets there.
Mm-hmm.
Little Nelly.
And her father.
Uh,
I think it's cool that it was a real thing, but it doesn't look great.
It was. I guess it was kind of cool, like back then.
Yeah, he doesn't look cool in the helmet with the camera on it. It's pretty iffy.
Didn't look.
And it just wasn't believable to think in a plane fight
No.
that would work out well for little Nelly.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And make sure her father comes. Q is so annoyed at having to travel to Japan. It's wonderful. He's so annoyed.
Yeah.
Next reason why it wasn't better, the production. One of the most common criticisms of this film is that Connery gives a lazy performance, that he's checked out. I don't really get that watching this. I think he's fine. He's not in the peak physical condition that he was in the first few ones, Anton, but I think he's good here. I think he's fine.
So when reading of those different criticisms, I think it was part of it had to do with just the delivery of some of the lines. Like some of the comebacks didn't have the same oomph that it did in previous films, which I could definitely see. There are a few of them was kind of a bit more subtle delivery, but I agree with you, Pat. I don't think it was like, I think it was definitely on par. And I don't think it didn't seem to me as checked out.
Yeah.
Did you notice Shane Rimmer playing control room guy? He has a real quick cameo in this film.
I saw that in the notes and I was like, oh snap.
Yep, he's one of the NASA technicians, which he would later play in Superman 2. But he pops up in a few Bond films, and we mentioned this on an older episode. Christopher Nolan cast him as he was much older at that point, but as a control room technician in Batman Begins, as an homage to James Bond.
Interesting.
Pretty cool on Nolan's part. They show a ton of Japan in this film. The whole film is set there. It's so fascinating to see Tokyo back in the 60s, right? Like you can see some similarities, but it's so different to look at now.
Yeah, there was some criticisms around spatial geography of how fast it would go from like a beach scene to like in the middle of the countryside. But for anyone that hasn't been to Japan or just your average moviegoer, you're not going to notice any of that.
That's a movie thing. That happens all the time. One of the best things about this movie, John Barry's score, it's astonishing. It's a work of art. It's one of the best in the series. It drives the entire movie. Beautiful melody, beautiful title song. I love all of the jazzy stuff that he throws into the action sequences. He adds some, Eastern influences into the melodies, we can say.
Yep, in a very fun way. Big shouts outs of course to Nancy Sinatra.
Yeah, it's a great song. One of the better ones in the series for sure. I like the title sequence too with all the volcano stuff. Definitely a highlight. I think it has the best action in the entire series up until that point. And I actually, even though this is a, almost a 60-year-old film at this point, I think the action really holds up. Some of the effects look dated, but we were talking about some of the stunts earlier. It's got a great fight in it when Bond fights The Rock's grandfather in Osato's office, and then all the set pieces. It's all really well done stuff. The cinematography is excellent. It just looks so good. I think the best shot in the film, we get that helicopter shot of him running across the rooftop at the Kobe docks. That's iconic.
Oh,
with the music,
scene.
the music cue, it's a chef's kiss. That is cinematic perfection, my friend.
They're doing it right, and I feel like it's definitely something to appreciate about the film. You've been touching on it for a bit now, but it really is a beautiful, beautiful film.
One of the best looking films in the series. It really, I'd put it like right up there, maybe just behind Skyfall.
Visually, I remember when I was watching the Little Nelly scene. Listen, was it kind of corny? Yes, but they did the best they could with everything they had in 1967 without killing anyone or supercomputers, which I thought it stands for something.
Yeah, the effects are dated. There's no getting around it, right? Like especially in 4K, you really notice a lot of the model work. It looked like during the Little Nelly sequence, it was like early green screen or blue screen. There was some blurring going on. They did. Pete, you're right. They did the best they could given the technology that they had.
And I think it stands for something, right? And like I think movies back then were made with like budgets that were you still had to be conscious. Like it wasn't, I want to make a Bond movie, great, here's 800 million, let's see how it goes.
Right. They had plenty of money, but you're right. I mean, they had to do everything optically. They either had to build it and shoot it or optically composite in. There was nothing digital they could do.
I think, and I don't think we brought this up, but speaking of like money and production, did we talk about the rappelling scene?
Oh, we're about to.
Please.
The Ninja Army it's incredible.
Army.
It's one of my favorite things in any movie ever. It really is.
It's pretty wild.
I said this earlier. The entire ending action sequence of the ninjas storming the volcano layer, it's spectacular to watch. I would put it up against almost any modern action movie. Guns, grenades, swords, throwing stars. It's got it all. It's spectacular to watch.
Yeah, they don't hold back with the ninjas.
I dug it. I was into it.
They don't. It's so the way they like build it up too is cool. How, you know, Bond is in like the control room. He sees them all getting shot in the crater. He does the cigarette thing. Cool. Amazing. Cigarettes save the world in this film.
You sound like an advertisement.
Yeah. Smoke.
Hilarious. I love that line when he asks if he can smoke and Blofeld tells him it won't be the nicotine that kills you, Mr. Bond. And then he kills the one guy. He opens the door. Some of them start dropping in. The one really smart ninja sticks the mine underneath it and blows a hole in the roof. And they all come in. It's just so good.
Talking about the time that guy was like climbing up on the scaffolding with like no supports. Like,
it's a real stunt. They all rappelled down without any safety harnesses. That was all real stuff.
I was watching that and I was like, these guys are savages. And gals, I think, if there were, I don't know if there was girl ninja.
No, I think Kissy was the only one. And of course, she didn't have a ninja outfit. They kept her in a bikini because this was 1967 and that's what they did then.
All right. Listen, it's important that we learn from this. Yeah. Right. I think actually
we learn from the alleged mistakes of the past.
Alleged mistakes.
That set, $1 million they spent on that. Anton, we mentioned Ken Adam a whole bunch of times already on this podcast, but this is his finest contribution to film, in my opinion.
Oh, iconic.
It's amazing. The volcano layer, that's the obvious one, right? But if you think about everything else that this film, Osato's office, Tiger's office, Tiger's personal train, which is badass, by the way.
Personal train, I was like, this is how the other half lives.
And Blofeld's private quarters with the piranha pool, the control room, everything is a visual treat. The sets and the entire look of this film, it's really influenced a lot of stuff. Even if you watch something like in modern day, like a show like Archer, which we've mentioned before, you can tell they took a lot of design inspirations from this.
And sometimes, it can sound like a joke if we reference things like the Venture Brothers, Austin Powers, maybe even like taking a look at any sort of spy thriller. You have to look at these films and say, this is what set the tone and really was the design that inspired a lot of that. So absolutely huge respect for just creating and setting the tone for spy thrillers for years to come.
Laying the foundation.
I wish that we had gotten more Tiger Tanaka.
Oh, he's such a cool character.
He's so cool. He's one of my favorite characters in the whole series. He's basically like Japanese James Bond. He seems to really enjoy himself, right? He seems to really enjoy his personal life. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Like similarly, Felix is the U.S. counterpart, right? So then Tiger is the Japanese counterpart. But
he's way cooler than Felix Leiter. No offense to Felix Leiter, but
yeah, but Tiger's so cool.
Yeah, because you always forget he's so active, right, in this movie, but he is the head of the Japanese Secret Service. So he's not just like a random agent. So he's like the Japanese M, basically.
Yeah, he's more like M.
Yeah.
I like when he says that line to Bond when they get on the train. He's just like, I assume your M has a similar arrangement. And Bond's like, oh, of course. He's covering for M. Like, nah, M doesn't have anything that cool.
Yes, he has it.
Of course. And they drink the sake on the train. It's wonderful. Yeah, I really wish we had gotten another appearance from him in a later film. He really should have been reused. And for all you Bond nerds out there, you of course know that Tiger does appear in a future continuation novel written by Raymond Benson. So he does appear again. In Japan, men come first and women come second. And then Bond says, I may just retire here.
Hilarious.
Great line.
Absolutely hilarious. Something that can only be said in the context of a movie in 1967.
Right.
Spectacular.
I like right after he kills The Rock's grandfather. I'm assuming he killed him when he bashed his head in with that statue. You're probably not recovering from that.
Yeah, he wasn't moving too much. And he was proceeding to drink.
I like when he
after that, so.
He goes, oh, Siamese vodka. That's such a great line. And then this is something that my wife and I quote to each other. If anyone offers champagne and if anyone declines it, you say nonsense. It adds a sparkle to the day.
Morning. I was like, I guess that was cool back then, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're drinking Dom Perignon. It's like, okay, I guess I'm not going to turn that down. She says, Mr. Osato believes in a healthy chest. I like when Blofeld tells the Chinese gentleman, extortion is my business, What do we think of the clothes, Anton?
It was just so like it's just part of the beauty of this film is just the fashion is just on point.
Yeah, I could see that. Everyone's well dressed.
Yeah. This is a classic example of why a good traditional suit will never go out of style. The suits that Bond wears in this, you could wear today and it would look great.
It wouldn't look as good as Sean Connery though.
You would not. He definitely gained some weight since Thunderball, but he wears a suit better than 99% of the population.
Wears it very well. The gray suit in the beginning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have one of those suits, Anton. I have a gray herringbone suit.
All right, well, we'll see you wearing that. We'll see you wearing that one when we go to Vegas.
Can absolutely do that.
We'll do a Vegas episode.
Man,
I'd love to do a live recording.
Oh, that could be a write-off, Anton.
All right.
Maybe not everything in Vegas. I don't think you can write off gambling, but
if you lose a lot, the IRS does allow for it.
If you lose a lot, wow, thanks. I feel better now. I have to lose a lot.
Specifically made a form on there. I was looking and I was like a 1099G. I was like, this is bad. This is bad.
Back to the clothes real quick. If you're ever not sure of what kind of suit to wear, the navy blue suit that he wears to meet Osato with the navy blue tie, just wear that.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with navy blue.
Fact.
And then, of course, this is the first appearance of the Mal suit that Blofeld wears, and that would continue up to the present day. And, of course, this is the exact look that Dr. Evil would go for, the parody. We really plowed through the production there, gentlemen, but anything to add? It was all stuff we liked.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff we liked.
Why it wasn't
one more
the
thing.
worst?
It totally caught me off guard when Moneypenny's giving Bond the Japanese dictionary, and he's like, "You forgot I took a first in Oriental language."
Instant Japanese.
I was like, "What?" That was his. Okay, cool. And I was like, "We're in for a treat."
Instant Japanese.
Oh man,
I was like, "Oh dear."
Like, what do you put it in the microwave? Like what? Yeah, that was there's a lot more to like here than not like.
I think it's why wasn't it the best?
We're about to wrap this up and give our ratings. Like, I don't have it ranked in my top 10 favorite ones, and now that we talked about it for 90 minutes, I don't know why. There's so much I like in this.
I think we should why it was better, I guess is the question mark.
Well, all right, let's start to give our ratings here. Unless either of you have something to add to the reasons, we can wrap this up.
I think we're going. Let's do it.
Okay, we talked about the racial stuff. We talked about the fact that this is the film where Bond really starts to jump the shark, and we gave our thoughts on the production of this film. Peter, as you are the guest, would you like to go first with your rating?
I'll go last. I went first last time.
Okay. Anton, you want to go before me or after?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I touched on it earlier on the episode in that the key things that I remember from the film as a kid was it was set in Japan and that there were ninjas. And listeners, as you've gone through, we love not only those aspects, but a lot of great aspects about the film that have really set the tone for not only Bond films in the future, but for tons of your spy and espionage movie consumption. And with that really does place this in a very iconic place in film history. So I really did enjoy this film. The stuff about race did seem a bit outdated. I think that is a pretty big knock on the film, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, if I can overlook it and just think about the film as a whole, understand that it's just a product of its time, you can just really enjoy it, because otherwise the film is so well done in terms of being able to showcase the beauty of its setting, just the choreography and the attention to detail for the set creation. It's just a great film. I think that for me, it's definitely a Bond film that I'm going to revisit again. I have to personally, I'm placing it at a solid B.
Well said, Anton. Connery was infamously unhappy during this. They really had to convince him to do this. He would have much preferred to do On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The turning Japanese thing in this film, it is pretty horrendous to watch now. It's dated in every way possible. It also has no bearing on the plot whatsoever, making its inclusion in this film even more baffling. And the criticism of this film, I understand them. I do think the highs are high. You have a fantastic score. It's really well filmed. It's some of the best, if not the best, production design of the series. Visually, it is an absolute joy to watch, even almost 60 years later. It's one of the best looking films in the entire series. I love all the set pieces. You get a ninja army. Every location, every set, they were really taking advantage of the Japanese setting. I do think the problems in here are fixable, right? You keep Aki alive, you get rid of Kissy Suzuki, you get rid of the turning Japanese stuff to fix not only the racial issues, but also the pacing. And it would be an improved film, despite the flaws, right? I mentioned how rewatchable I find this one. I stand by it. It is so ridiculous, but I find this film, it's just so much fun to rewatch. It really is one of my favorites in the series at this point. I am with you, Anton. I rate this a B. I have this ranked 12th out of 26 Bonds, so upper mid tier. However, I may need to reevaluate that just based on how enjoyable I find this one. So definitely agree with you. B for me.
Ooh, do you think it's going to break into the top 10?
I think it
like
might.
It sounds like it's making a good push.
You know what? I think I probably will because, like I said, I just, for whatever reason, if I want to watch a Bond movie, this is one of the first ones I go to.
Okay. Listeners, I'm going to have to go ahead and plug it again. We've talked about it before, setting up our Patreon. And I feel like a great episode that we could do for the Patreon would be a first ever tier list for Bond films with our Bond aficionado, Pat, leading the way and placing his favorite films for Bond and where they rank on the grade scale. I think that our listeners would love that. Wow. I know I would.
I think we actually have to set up the Patreon at this point. We keep talking about it.
Sounds like let's get some stuff moving here, guys.
Yeah. All right, Peter, your thoughts on You Only Live Twice.
Oh, man. All right. So I think it's important to paint the context as the reviewer, as always, just to determine any conflict of interest or anything that could be mistaken by the audience in your grade. I have seen mostly the newer Bond movies. This is my first one, which I think is the third one in the series now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's the fifth one.
So I've seen it out of order. I respect it. So I preface this with saying I have to see it as a standalone movie, and the only reference I have is what it gave birth to, which is the future Bond movie. So that being said, I understand the criticism about the racial stuff. It's there. I think the world was different. I don't really think it needs to be there. But you know what? Maybe they're trying to reach for something to show how different the world is. I don't really know. It doesn't really need it, but whatever. It's in the movie. I thought the stunts were pretty cool for 1967. The weightless scene at the beginning was actually hilarious because I think it looks worse than the supposed faked moon landing, which is kind of hilarious because they had money. The fight choreography, I think, was actually really sick. Some of the plot holes were there and blatant, but I'm willing to overlook them because it's a Bond movie. Overall, I'm going to say B. I mean, I'd even give it a B+ because I enjoyed it. I had a great time watching the movie. I was laughing about it the entire time. I thought it was really good. Let me rephrase. Not really good, but I was entertained, and I've seen a lot of bad movies.
B+ is really good. That's okay. You can think it's really good. That's okay.
You could have whatever opinion on this you
want. Yeah, I'm gonna stick B+. As given that context of not seeing anything else, I'm gonna say B+.
There we go.
I think this is a really good Bond. It's fun. It knows what it is. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's in on the joke.
It doesn't try to be something it's not.
It's entertaining. Exactly. That is it for You Only Live Twice. We will be covering 2 more Bond films this season. We're going to be doing them in release order. So the next one you will hear is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and then we will be doing Diamonds Are Forever later. But that is it for this week's edition of Why Wasn't It Better? Peter, once again, it has been an absolute pleasure. We love having you on.
Agreed.
Glad to help
Thank
out
you so much,
This
Peter.
one was fun too, because I've never seen it before. So if you got any other movies that I haven't seen, please. You'll be surprised of how long the list is.
Well, tune in.
Oh, I do every week.
Yeah. Anton, what is next week's episode? Is it a James Cameron film?
Our film next week is another jump into, you could say, the deep end with James Cameron. Another delving look into James Cameron's fascination with the water and seeing how much can he drive Ed Harris crazy.
Avatar 2?
Yeah, it's going to be The Abyss because The Abyss is finally coming to Blu-ray/4K. So we thought that we would cover that in celebration of it. So we will see you next time when we talk about The Abyss. Take care, everyone.